Welcome to Life Stories, where we share powerful and heartwarming tales that touch the soul. Today's story is about a successful businessman who, after years of focusing on his career, is suddenly confronted with the unexpected, finding out he has a daughter he never knew existed. As he navigates the challenges of fatherhood and grapples with the guilt of his past, he discovers the true meaning of family, love, and second chances. Join us as we dive into this emotional journey of redemption and hope. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to start today's story with Life Stories. It was a crisp autumn afternoon when I found myself wandering through the park. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long, slanted shadows across the ground, and the faint rustle of leaves in the wind created a peaceful atmosphere. I had no real purpose for being there. I never did. I wasn't the type to enjoy such places. But sometimes, the relentless hum of city life became too much. It was as though the walls of my penthouse were closing in. The constant stream of emails, phone calls, and meetings eating away at me. And so, I came to the park. Children were laughing in the distance, their voices carrying like a static hum that echoed in the empty spaces of my mind. It was noise, yes, but meaningless noise. I glanced briefly at the playground, but quickly turned my eyes away. Families were gathered at picnic tables, enjoying what seemed to be a perfect afternoon. But I wasn't part of their world. Their laughter reminded me of things I no longer wanted to remember. My phone buzzed in my pocket, breaking the silence of my thoughts. A text message from my assistant, reminding me of a dinner with investors later that evening. I ignored it, as I often did with anything that seemed to pull me further from the stillness I desperately sought. My steps slowed near the fountain, and it was there, in that moment of quiet solitude, that I felt a small tug on my coat. Startled, I looked down, my gaze falling on the face of a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 6 or 7, her dark hair tangled in a messy braid, and her coat too large for her small frame, swallowing her hands as she stood there. Her wide, dark eyes met mine with such intensity, such sincerity, that for a moment, I froze. "Are you Mr. Lawson?" she asked. Her voice soft but clear, breaking the silence between us. I blinked, caught off guard by her question. "I am. Can I help you?" I asked, my voice strained, more out of surprise than any real desire to offer assistance. She hesitated, her small fingers nervously twisting the hem of her oversized coat. She took a deep breath and looked at me with a seriousness that was far beyond her years. "Why don't you ever visit Mommy's grave?" The question hit me like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me. I stared at her, struggling to find the words. What did she mean? I had never met her, never heard of her mother. And yet, there was something in her eyes, something that made me feel like I had been caught. Like I had been hiding from something that I couldn't run from anymore. "I think you have the wrong person," I said, my voice tight, but my heart already pounding with a strange mixture of confusion and dread. But the little girl shook her head, and with a trembling hand, she pulled something from her coat pocket. It was a photograph, worn and creased at the edges. The kind of picture you keep in your wallet for years, protecting it from the elements with all your might. She held it out to me, her small hand trembling, and I took it without thinking. The photograph was faded, the colors long since drained away by time. But there I was, a younger version of myself. My hair longer, my smile more genuine, and beside me was Emma, her face bright and full of life. Her laughter almost tangible even through the worn edges of the picture. It was as though the photograph captured not just a moment in time, but a piece of the woman I had once loved. I took a sharp breath. The world seemed to tilt around me, my heart beating in my ears as I stared at the photo. My grip tightened on the picture. I hadn't seen Emma in years. Not since she left without a word, without explanation. I had tried to find her, once upon a time, but as the years passed and my life became filled with board meetings and financial forecasts, I gave up. I buried the memories of her so deep that they no longer hurt. "Where did you get this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, my fingers gripping the photograph so tightly that I thought it might tear. It was Mommy's, she said, her voice breaking, barely a whisper in the wind. She told me to keep it safe. She paused, her eyes clouded with sorrow. And then she spoke again, her voice faltering. She said you were busy. But that you loved her very much. I felt my breath catch in my throat. The weight of her words sinking deep into me, suffocating me with guilt. Emma had always been a part of me. A memory that I couldn't quite let go of. Even though I had tried. But I had never expected this. Never expected that I would have to face the consequences of my silence. My absence. I hadn't even known she had a child. Hadn't known she was gone. I closed my eyes, fighting the emotions that threatened to overwhelm me. Where is your mother now? I asked, already knowing the answer. The little girl bit her lip, her eyes filling with tears that she tried to hold back. She went to heaven last month. She whispered, her voice breaking. The social worker lady said I couldn't stay alone. The air seemed to freeze around us, the weight of her words pressing down on me like a heavy stone. And then, she spoke again, her voice so small, so fragile. And your father? I asked, though I already feared the answer. She stared at her shoes, her little shoulders slumping. She said you were my father. Those words, simple as they were, hit me harder than anything ever had. It was like I had been punched in the gut. The air knocked from my lungs as everything I had tried to bury came rushing back to the surface. I took a step back, the world spinning around me. And for a moment, I couldn't breathe, but her small, trembling voice broke through the fog of my mind. What's your name? I managed to ask, forcing the words out as my throat tightened. Lily, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I repeated the name, tasting it on my tongue. It was unfamiliar, yet it felt strangely sweet, like something I should have known long ago. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with hope and fear. Are you really my dad? She asked. Her voice so small, so vulnerable. The truth stuck in my throat. Too heavy to swallow, too sharp to spit out. But as I looked at her, I could see it now. The shape of her nose, the curve of her cheekbones. Little hints that I had never wanted to see before. But now they were undeniable. I don't know, I said, my voice trembling, hating the weakness in my words. Her face crumpled, the hope draining from her eyes as she turned away. Oh, she mumbled, her voice so quiet, so broken. I'm sorry. I reached out instinctively, but hesitated, unsure of what I was even supposed to do. I couldn't just let her go. Not like this. Wait, I called, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. Where are you staying? She stopped, but didn't turn back to look at me. The foster home on Maple Street, she said softly, sniffling. But I don't like it. They don't let me keep Mommy's things. Guilt gnawed at my insides. I had spent years building my empire, climbing ladders, closing deals, and yet, I had completely failed to notice the world around me, the world that had been waiting for me to show up. And now, there was a little girl standing before me, the daughter I never knew I had. And I couldn't let her go. Can I take you there? I asked, though I already knew the answer. She glanced up at me, her eyes wary, unsure. You won't leave me there, will you? The question nearly broke me. How could I answer that? How could I promise her that I wouldn't let her go when I hadn't even known she existed? No, I said hoarsely, I won't leave you. And just like that, something shifted. I didn't know what it meant yet. But I knew I couldn't walk away. Not again. Not this time. The drive to the foster home was a blur. I couldn't focus on the road, even though I knew it like the back of my hand. All I could think about was the small, trembling figure in the passenger seat beside me. Lily sat silently, clutching the photograph of her mother, Emma, as though it were the only thing keeping her anchored to this world. Her eyes were distant, lost in thought, and her body curled tightly into the seat, as though bracing herself for something she couldn't name. I kept glancing at her, wondering how I had missed this, how I had missed her. I had spent so many years buried in my own world, focusing on my career, my success, and all the things that didn't matter. And now, here I was, driving a little girl to a foster home, realizing that everything I had worked so hard for meant nothing compared to this moment. Compared to her. When we finally arrived, I could see the building immediately. The foster home on Maple Street was a squat, run-down structure, its peeling paint and sagging roof a sharp contrast to the shiny, perfect world I had created for myself. Lily didn't move when I stopped the car. She just sat there, staring at the worn, cracked pavement beneath our feet. I didn't know what to say. But I couldn't let her stay there. Not in a place like this. The social worker, a weary woman in her 40s with glasses perched low on her nose, met us at the door. Her expression softened when she saw Lily, but her eyes flickered nervously to me. I wasn't sure why, but I could feel her scrutiny on me, as though she knew I wasn't just a visitor, that I had some deeper connection to the child standing at my side. "You must be Mr. Lawson," she said, her voice flat. "I was just about to call you." I nodded numbly, not sure what to make of her statement. How did she know me? I hadn't given her my number. Hadn't even thought to call. But in that moment, everything felt surreal. My life was turning in directions I had never expected. And I wasn't sure I was prepared to handle it. I need to know if she's really mine," I said, the words barely escaping my throat. The social worker hesitated, glancing at Lily, who was still clutching the photograph to her chest. "We can arrange a test, of course," she said, her voice softening. "But Lily's mother, Emma, always spoke of you. She never stopped talking about you." The mention of Emma sent a shockwave through me. Emma had never spoken of me in the years we were apart. Not even a word. I had tried, once, to track her down, to find out why she left without a trace. But I had given up. Moved on, convinced that whatever happened between us was just a memory fading into nothing. Yet here was this child. This little girl who was my daughter. And the truth of my failures came rushing back. Lily glanced up at me, her small hand clutching my sleeve. I could see the hope in her eyes. The silent plea she was making. She wanted something from me. She needed something, and I had no idea how to give it to her. "I want to take her home," I said, the words coming out with more conviction than I felt. The decision settled in my chest. And although it was terrifying, I knew it was the right thing to do. The social worker looked at me for a moment, weighing the situation, then sighed. "There's paperwork," she began, but I interrupted her. I don't care about the paperwork. I can't let her stay here." Lily's eyes widened, her fingers gripping mine tighter. And for the first time since I had met her, I felt like I was doing something right. It wasn't enough. It wasn't even close to enough. But it was something. The social worker didn't argue. She just nodded. And soon we were walking out of the foster home, leaving behind the place that had been Lily's world for far too long. As we drove back to my penthouse, Lily seemed to shrink into herself again, clutching the photograph even tighter. I could see the tremble in her hands. But she didn't speak, not once. The silence between us was deafening. I wanted to say something, anything, to break it. But no words seemed right. How could I comfort her when I hadn't been there for her before? How could I promise her that everything would be okay when I didn't even know what I was doing? When we arrived at my penthouse, I led Lily inside, but she stopped at the threshold, looking around at the vast, empty space with wide eyes. It was cold and impersonal, a reflection of the life I had built. The walls were lined with glass, and the floors were marble, the space echoing with emptiness. I wanted to tell her it was a home, that it was safe here. But I didn't feel safe in this place either. "This is your room," I said, trying to sound reassuring as I led her down the hallway. The guest room had a big bed, piles of pillows, and a window that overlooked the city. But Lily just stood there, unsure. I didn't know how to make her feel at home. I didn't know how to be a father. She wandered inside, glancing at the bed but not touching it. She set her small bag down beside it, then hesitated, looking up at me with wide eyes. I could see the vulnerability there. The silent question. Is this where I belong? I wanted to say yes. I wanted to say that everything would be all right. But instead, I just nodded, my throat tight. If you need anything, just let me know. She mumbled a thank you, barely audible, and then moved to the bed, her fingers smoothing the quilt. I stood at the door for a moment, watching her. She didn't look up, didn't acknowledge me, but there was something in her posture, a quiet acceptance, that made my chest ache. And so I left her there, alone in the guest room, with nothing but the weight of the past between us. I didn't know how to fix it, how to fix anything, but I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't let her go. I couldn't let her face this world alone anymore. As I walked back down the hallway, I heard nothing but the silence. But in that silence, something began to shift, something I wasn't ready for, something I hadn't expected, the faintest flicker of hope. The days after Lily moved into my penthouse felt like an endless blur. I couldn't escape the constant pressure that weighed down on my chest, the responsibility, the guilt, the overwhelming feeling that I was in over my head. How could I possibly fill the shoes of a father? I wasn't prepared for this. Not at all. I was a businessman, used to numbers, not emotions. I had never considered what it meant to care for someone in the way Lily needed. She was still so quiet, so withdrawn, and I didn't know how to break through. Each morning, I would offer her breakfast, trying my best to keep things normal. But the silence between us always lingered, heavy and unspoken. I could feel the weight of her sadness, but I didn't know how to ease it. I wasn't sure how to make her feel like she belonged here. In the midst of this, I started visiting a cafe down the street, just a short walk from the penthouse. I needed to get away, to clear my head, and the quiet little cafe felt like a haven from the chaos of my mind. The owner, Chloe, was warm and kind, with a mischievous glint in her eyes. She wasn't the type of person who would let me wallow in my thoughts for long. Her wit, sharp as it was, often cut through my endless spiraling. One afternoon, I found myself sitting at the counter, sipping on a coffee I hadn't ordered, my mind miles away. Chloe caught my eye as she wiped down the counter, a smile tugging at her lips. "You look like you've been run over by a truck," she said, half teasing, half concerned. "What's going on?" I forced a smile, but it felt hollow. "Just adjusting to life," I said vaguely. "Ah, so you're the type to bury your head in work when things get tough," Chloe said with a knowing look. "You know, it's not just your board meetings and profits that need attention. People need it, too." Her words struck me like a lightning bolt. And for the first time in weeks, I actually looked at her. She had a way of making me confront things I didn't want to face. But Chloe's words lingered with me long after I left the cafe that day. I couldn't stop thinking about them. I had spent so long focusing on my career, my own success, that I hadn't taken a moment to see what was right in front of me. Lily needed me. She needed a father, not just someone who provided for her but someone who would be present in her life. And I had no idea where to start. That evening, when I returned home, I saw Lily sitting quietly by the window, staring out at the city. She had a sketchbook in front of her, but the pencil was still. She wasn't drawing, wasn't creating, she was just sitting. I felt a pang of guilt, a deep ache in my chest. This wasn't the way things were supposed to be. I didn't know how to approach her, but as I stood in the doorway, something inside me shifted. I had to try, even if I didn't know the right words. "Hey," I said gently, walking over to her, "what are you working on?" She didn't answer at first, but after a moment, she turned the sketchbook toward me. It was a simple drawing, a figure of a person. A woman, with no face. The person was holding a child's hand. I blinked, swallowing hard. "Who is that?" I asked, my voice thick. Lily's small voice barely reached my ears. "It's supposed to be you, and Mommy. But I don't know how to finish it." My heart stopped. I didn't know how to respond. I wanted to tell her it was okay, that I was here for her, but I felt the weight of my own failings too deeply to speak. Instead, I sat beside her, quietly, and for the first time in a long while, we were just together. In the days that followed, I tried harder. I worked through the awkward moments, the times when I didn't know what to say, when I felt like I was failing. But slowly, Lily started to warm up. She would sit with me in the evenings, watching movies, even if she didn't say much. She would smile faintly when I tried to braid her hair, clumsy attempts that always ended up tangled and uneven. And I would laugh, a nervous, awkward chuckle, but I would laugh nonetheless. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Through all this, I started to feel something I hadn't in years. It was a deep, aching sense of responsibility, yes, but also something softer, something that surprised me. Love. Not the kind of love I'd had for Emma. Not the passionate, reckless love of my younger days. This was different. It was quieter, more gentle, more rooted in something real. It was a love I could give, if I allowed myself to. But then, just when I thought I was beginning to understand what it meant to be a father, I found myself questioning everything. Chloe kept popping up in my thoughts, her words echoing in my head. She had become something more than just the cafe owner to me. But I was still haunted by the guilt that I hadn't been there for Emma. The guilt that I wasn't the father I should have been for Lily. And I didn't know if I was ready to let someone else into my life. Into this fragile new world I was trying to build with my daughter. But Chloe seemed to understand. She had a way of knowing when I needed a push, a nudge towards something better. And one afternoon, when I was at the cafe again, she asked me point blank, "Do you really think you can keep running from everything forever, Ethan?" she asked, her tone gentle but firm. I didn't answer at first. But when I looked at her, really looked at her, I realized that maybe, just maybe, I didn't want to run anymore. It wasn't just about trying to fix everything, to fix myself. It was about learning to be present, to let go of the past, and to embrace what was in front of me. Lily, the daughter I never knew I had, was my responsibility now, and Chloe, well, maybe she was part of my future. As the days passed, the house grew warmer. Lily and I began to settle into a rhythm. A quiet routine of mornings with mismatched pajamas and evenings filled with laughter, small, awkward moments that slowly turned into something beautiful. And with each passing day, I found myself falling more into this role of fatherhood. A role I had once feared but now embraced. Even if imperfectly. But there was still something missing. Something I couldn't quite define. And then one evening, when I least expected it, I realized what it was. Chloe. She had become a constant in my life. A grounding force that helped me understand the true meaning of love and family. She didn't try to fix me, instead, she accepted me with all my flaws, just as I was, and for the first time, I felt like I wasn't carrying the weight of the world alone. One cold winter morning, as I watched Lily play in the snow with a bright, innocent smile on her face, Chloe's hand found mine, warm and steady. Without a word, I knew that this was home. This was where I was meant to be. Lily's laughter echoed in the distance, and I felt a peace settle in my heart, a peace I had never known. The mistakes of the past no longer held power over me. I had made promises, and I was determined to keep them. I wasn't perfect, but I was trying, and that was enough. As the snow gently fell, covering the world in a soft white blanket, I realized that I had finally found my family. Together, we were healing. Together we were building a future. And for the first time, I let myself believe in the possibility of happiness. In a home full of love, laughter, and hope. If you enjoyed this heartwarming story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more life stories. Your support means the world to us.